least get rolling and move along today.
Perfect. Okay. For everyone that is attending, and that's important, my name is Gene King. I'm the moderator today. We are looking at the Highland Blasting and Associates transactional discussion that is in the hands of Center Street right now. Gordon, if you go forward to the next slide, please. With me today are esteemed gentlemen, Eric Ratliff, that you see in the camera, who is CFO of Highland Blasting and Associates. Ed Wiley, who you see in the camera, is president of Highland Blasting and Associates. J.R. Thacker, CEO of Center Street, and all you guys on the call right now know J.R., and you know he forgot to bring his camera. Right, J.R.?
Yep. Absolutely, man. So had it planned and left it laying on the desk.
And I'm Gene King, Senior Managing Director of Sequence Holdings, who owns Sequence Financial Specialists, the managing broker dealer for the transaction. So Gordon, without further ado, let's go to the next. Now, before we get started with the background with Eric, everybody will look at the very bottom of your tab, because I forgot to tell you, there's a little Q&A at the bottom. The way it's set up, it's recorded so we can work through this efficiently. Nobody can really talk, but you can ask Q&A, and if you type Q&A, we'll see it and we'll get it answered, period. So please use that instead of the chat, because the Q&A we can attach and make sure we get an answer if we can't answer it for whatever reason on the call. So at this time, I'm going to ask Eric if he would just give a little company background and information on Highland Blasting and Associates. Thank you, Eric.
Fantastic, Gene. Thank you. And everyone, thank you for spending your time with us today. Highland Blasting and Associates was founded in 2018. Although the company is new, we're not new to the activities that you'll learn that the company does. And on point number two, we have specifically designed it along with the other folks that were previously mentioned on the slide beforehand, to be a qualified small business. It's a domestic C corporation. And later on during the presentation, we'll explore what this means. However, I do want to tell you that it should be extremely rare that you see that you could offer to your clients qualified small business stock, and also that it's in a regulated and stable industry that we're in. We are fully ATF licensed in Tennessee and Kentucky. We do have the ability to be a blasting products dealer, and we do sell our product to others. At Highland, our philosophy is that we want to build the best reputation possible in Tennessee and in Kentucky. We do a lot of work in the Nashville area, which we'll get to that later, but we've done a good job at that. We don't want to go too fast. We don't want to go too slow. We want to grow, and we want to be competitive with all those that are in this industry. The other thing too is that as part of Highland Blasting, there's also a subsidiary company called BRC, which, as we continue through the presentation, we'll talk about how the Biden infrastructure bill has been very positive for our company. But what I do want you to think about through the presentation is that with that infrastructure bill, and especially in Tennessee and Kentucky, in order to fulfill it, in order to build new roads, in order to build new schools and buildings, there's two things you got to deal with, and that's rock and that's streams. So we're the specialists in the state with private companies, and also with with government agencies like TDOT and the TVA, that we blast the rock out and we make sure that the wetlands are put back as they should be for those general contractors. Gene, I guess if we'll go on to the.
All right, so you ready to go to the next slide? Go ahead, Gordon.
Well, hey, Eric, I just wanted to kind of throw in for the folks that aren't familiar with Nashville and the geology of Middle Tennessee, that it kind of surprised me as well when I first moved to Nashville from East Tennessee. and no houses had basements. That was kind of my first clue. And then actually found out that most places here around Middle Tennessee, there's only a couple feet of topsoil before you hit solid rock, and sometimes not even that. So Ed can probably even speak a little bit more detail on that on one of the future slides, but that's kind of what drives a lot of the demand for business here versus other places.
Absolutely, JR. And, to say it another way, they're not putting a subway in Nashville anytime soon. So, um, and that segues very well into our business plan for item number one. Demand exists for services currently and into the future. This just isn't your average contracting outfit. You have to be specialized. You have to have the right people that are trained at both the use of explosives, obviously, and also at the the EPA and the state regulation of streams. Very specialized industry, and we're very fortunate that we've attracted the people that we need for that. And our business is a little different than others because a lot of other businesses are having problems hiring people. Whereas on the other hand, people are, leaving where they're working at to come work for us. They like our philosophy and they like our environment. Tennessee, of course, its most popular population center is Nashville. We could go through the rest of the presentation with the growth of Nashville. Lots of cranes, lots of things going on. You got Facebook, Amazon, lots of businesses have moved to Tennessee, and a lot of people are moving to Tennessee because there's really no effective state income tax for its residents. But those population centers would be Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, and the Tri-Cities. And we focus on the area of Knoxville to Nashville, although we have done work outside of that. And also, as our shared border with Kentucky. There is a general shortage of licensed and capable drilling and blasting companies, not capable employees to do drilling and blasting. This has a lot to do with the regulatory standpoint of it. It has a lot to do with the capital that's needed to run such a company. I think Ed and I make a great team on this because, as CFO and being a lawyer and such, I handle a lot of the legal matters and regulatory matters. Ed does as well, but he also has a diverse background in this type of service. There's also a shortage of stream credits in Tennessee, and just to make sure everybody understands what stream credits are, think of them as like carbon credits. What happens is, and this is a 30,000 foot view. There's more detail to it, but simply put, if a contractor interferes with the natural, the natural boundaries, the way that a wetland or a stream is found in their construction project, then they either have to go through the very expensive process through state and federal guidelines to correct what they've done, that they've not harmed the wildlife that's in the stream. They've not harmed the path of the waters in the aggregate in Tennessee. So part of our business is helping companies that go in as general contractors that have to do with streams to fix those streams. But the other thing is if they don't want to fix the streams, much like a carbon credit, they can buy credits from landowners and companies in other more remote areas of Tennessee that have opened up their streams and have improved the quality of them, that the EPA and the state government issues credits to those more rural areas for fixing the streams and wetlands that they can sell. They can sell to the general contractors of the population centers for when they're building a parking lot or they're building a building or they're building a warehouse and they get into the wetlands and they get into the streams. So instead of in Nashville having to fix all that, they can go to these rural landowners and companies that are in this business and buy credits for the interference of those streams and waterways in Nashville, for example. Something that you need to know about Tennessee, and I'll be quick about this, I know we got to move on, but Tennessee has a shortage of what we call mitigation banks. They have a shortage of these areas in the rural communities that have credits available for sale, unlike some other states that are nearby, like Georgia. So there is a pent up huge demand in Tennessee to go to rural areas to create those credits and to sell them to the population centers for all the construction that's going on. And it's squarely in our business, and that's what we do, is we get contracted by those people that are doing this in the rural areas to make their stream produce the most credits possible for them to sell to the population centers. Moving on to the next slide, if there's no questions there. Discussion of existing and future work contracts. And it looks like I'm going to turn this one over to you, and I'll help you with it as we go along.
Okay, thank you, guys. We've got about 800. I'm going to talk about the blasting company side first, and then I'll talk about the stream side next. But on the blasting side, going into the rest of the year and into the beginning of next year, we've got about $850,000 of contracted work to complete. That's in Smyrna, Tennessee, Ottawa, Tennessee, and Albany, Kentucky area, and Knoxville, depending on which job we're on. The Smyrna is we've been on a sewer line there since January of this year, and we are almost completed with that sewer line, and it was being put in by the town of Smyrna with the intent to make Smyrna grow to the west side of I-24, which has worked really, really well. We've met one contractor for sure that we've already contracted a 65-acre development with to do the blasting on. And that same owner, Surrey Homes, is the company name for anybody that's local to Nashville. They're going to develop 400 acres of property along this new sewer line in the next 10 years. So if we fulfill what we say we will with them and do a good job, which we will, then they've got 10 to 20 years of blasting work in that one company. And we just started our first job with them in the last 2 weeks. So really excited about the future with Surrey Homes. We also are working with a new client in Knoxville, Wild Building Construction, and they're doing multiple developments around the Loudon, Tennessee area, Knoxville, Morristown. We just doing our first job with them right now too. So a good bit of work. We have bid some jobs with Southern Sites, which anyone in Nashville would probably know who that is. They're doing developments all over the Nashville market there for Goodall Homes, which is a division of Clayton Homes now. So they just do multiple large scale developments in that area. They've got more work than they can do or can get contractors to do. So we're actively bidding jobs with them. Safe Harbor Development, which is based out of Knoxville. We've done one job with them, and they're getting ready to start two 500 plus unit developments in the Nashville market. We should be receiving plans before the end of the year for those to start bidding on those. We drill for 2 different quarries in Middle Tennessee pretty much year round with one of our drills, Smyrna Ready Mix and SCP Limestone. And we literally keep one drill tied up in those 2 quarries just back and forth between the 2. And we've actually already achieved our annual goal for drilling income this year with 2 months to go. So we're happy about that. As Eric said a while ago, we sell explosives and we'll continue to do so. We're selling around 200,000 to 250 a year in explosives outside of what we use ourselves. And we do probably $150,000 a year of what we call shot services for quarries in Crossville, Tennessee. They're dimensional stone quarries where they do their own drilling, get the holes ready, and we simply just come in with explosives, load them, and shoot the shot for them, keep them mining the rock. So that's kind of an overview of where we are on the blasting contracts. We're continually getting opportunities to build more work, which obviously we'll do as much as we possibly can with what we have to work with. But part of this offering, as everybody knows, is to be able to grow the company, get another drill, another blaster if needed, another truck for delivery purposes, and be able to increase revenues and take on more work. So,
And Ed, I'll make a couple of comments there if you
Sure.
don't mind. One thing is that, you know, our pro formas are available, and we anticipate meeting or exceeding those for this year from a gross income perspective. The other thing is that we have in the mid-20s of employees, but and that's large for a dedicated blasting company in Tennessee. But also several of our people have 20, 30, even 30 years of experience in the blasting industry. Wanted to make sure we mentioned that. JR, I think just for the others that's on the presentation here with us that might not have visited Nashville lately, can you kind of comment to the group about just how rapidly the home market is expanding in Nashville?
Yeah, sure. It's really hard to believe until you see the growth, but for 2020 last year, and I saw a survey, U-Haul actually tracks this by one-way rentals and other rental truck companies. Tennessee, and specifically Nashville, was the #1 destination that people were moving to, just based on their data. It is, the real estate market has been booming here around Nashville and the entire Middle Tennessee area for the last few years. But right now, basically, anybody buying a house, it is a bidding war, and realtors will tell you expect to pay at least 5 to 10% above whatever asking price is if you want to get it and not be bumped out by other people. And most are going full prices. It is extremely busy. Basically, they can't build a lot of these fast enough. And a lot of our folks out there will kind of know some of the other projects that we've done here, because Epic, that did multifamily, they've done a couple projects. Cottonwood has done some, also multifamily ones. Mill Green has been doing, I think, I'm sorry, Mill Green, I'm not sure they have here in the Nashville area yet, but 2 or 3 or 4 of the others, in fact, Madison group out of Charlotte that we've done a lot of the self-storage with and multifamily, they have 2 projects going here right now, multifamily and 2 self-storage ones. So it's really moving quickly. You know, it can't keep up with demand. So that's why I think with the new construction and roads that are being built, Highland's going to be very busy for many, many years to come.
JR, thank you for that. And I also do want to mention about Madison, good group of guys, and enjoy going to the Titans game with them. We won that night, so glad you mentioned them. And the final thing I'll say, somebody might have tried to talk there. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you know, JR mentioned houses and roads. We are TDOT approved, or Department of Transportation approved. So as Biden's infrastructure bill hits the state to expand those roads, we're at the top of the list with TDOT to do these specific functions. Sorry, and I might have interrupted someone there. I apologize.
No, I think what we're going to do now, Gordon, if you'll turn your volume up, go to the next slide. We just going to show those that are attending a couple of examples of some blasting.
This is a sewer line shot in Smyrna here on that new line.
Good
Duck.
God. Okay, JR.
The first broker to place like, I don't know, 200,000 with us gets to hit the button.
That's right. I love that.
Hey, Hey,
So
how
they
about
get to haul-
anybody that does that gets to come and push the button? I think
Yeah,
that'd
you
be
get-
cool.
Yeah, man.
Everybody gets to go push the button.
They get to holler fire in the hole and push the button.
That's right.
JR, why don't you take a few moments and just explain the current transaction, knowing everybody's got the one pager, executive summaries, everything's in your hands, but go ahead, JR, thank you.
Yep, sure, Gene. So to kind of give the overview on this, this is kind of a unique design as far as investment products. And the reason that we structured it in this manner was so that it would have great tax benefits. So essentially, we built it around the qualified small business, it's called QSBS in Section 1202 rule in the Revenue Code, that is very tax favorable. It's tax free. There's some things that might adjust it a little, but not much. So here's roughly the way that it works, guys, for investors. So I'm going to use round numbers. Minimum investments, 25,000, but I'm going to use 100 to make math easy. It's a Series A preferred. It is the top of the capital stack, above both Ed and Eric's stock ownership of the common. First in line, top of the capital stack. It is designed for investors to hold it 5 years. And the intent is for Highland to call it in year 5 or in year 6. It's a zero coupon, so it doesn't pay basically any coupons as it goes along, but 100,000 in, called in year 5, client gets back 150,000. With that 50,000 under current rules and the current QSBS, but again, there's a few minor tweaks that they're talking about in the new bill, that's tax free. So 50,000 or 10% basically per year, tax free. If it's called in year 6, it's 100 in, gets back 157.5. And if not, it does mature. We got a hard maturity date, December 1st, 2027. It is going to mature, and then there's 11% that is paid in accrued dividends if it is not called. So we made it kind of very punitive on the company to not call it in year 5 or 6, so that it would be essentially qualifying the qualified small business to 1202 for that to be tax free. Now, if it ends up paying out in the dividends, and it isn't called, Eric and Ed are going to be real frustrated with themselves because it costs the company basically about 20% more to go 1 day past that call period in interest. So 11%, it matures, it hadn't been called, then the clients basically get back 177,000 for 100 in with that qualifying under the qualified dividends. So Reg D, there's not much of it left. We're only doing 4 million of this because that was the capital that is needed for the additional equipment and for the growth. But it is very rare that we find a business that fits in to the structure for that tax-free exemption under Section 1202. Now, kind of a side note, is that if you have a client and they want out early, before the 5 years, we do have early redemption on it. Now, they don't get any of the accrued dividend at 11 or 10, but basically there's no penalty. We're just going to basically buy it back from them. And that offering is out there twice a year. And I think we built into that, Eric, isn't it like 1% that we built in to give them for the redemption on that?
I think so. Yeah. We had to do it that way, so we kept the tax benefit for the people that stay in for the entire time.
Yep. So 1% if they put in for early redemption, 1% per year. So worst case, the client's unhappy, they want their money back in 2 years. They get their money back plus about 1% per year interest. Tell what, better than what checking accounts are paying or savings accounts at this point. With that, let's move on, I guess, to the next slide there.
And really,
Q&A.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, we are through with discussion and just kind of under your Q&A button at the bottom, if anybody happens to have any questions, don't hesitate to click it and ask a question now so we can answer.
And Eric, if you might just kind of talk a little about, I know there's some proposals in the tax bill or the Build Back Better bill that, and a lot of things were cut out of that bill already that were going to affect the investment world and specifically on a lot of the private offerings. But what's kind of the latest on any changes on QSBS or 1202?
Sure, JR. Let's look at this in context of all taxes. All ships rise with the tide, and I think with Biden's, BBBA thing, that everything is raising by a certain amount. So thinking of that like qualified dividends and capital gains, for example, are scheduled to go to 25%. And so where QSBS land, well, it didn't land anywhere yet, and it's just my opinion, I don't think it will. But if it were to land in that type of thought pattern, then what would happen is that instead of paying no tax at the end, then less than half of the tax would be paid at the end of it. Now, remember that the call function of this lasts longer than Biden's current term. First of all. Second of all is that a lot of the folks that's here may it is not carried interest, but if you're familiar with carried interest and how it works, again, this is under QSBS 1202, but you can compare it to carried interest. If your client invests in something similar that's going to pay qualified dividends or dividends at all, then they're going to get hit with that every year. And here they'll get hit if it were qualified dividends with 25% based on what seems like it's going to pass. Otherwise, if with this investment, if it gets called at year 5 or 6 depending, then instead of paying 25% tax all along on that dividend, that tax gets wrapped up in the call of the security, that the tax they would have paid each year and sooner, you want to pay taxes later rather than sooner. It gets wrapped up into the call of that security that what would have been a dividend falls under QSBS. So you end up paying less than half of what you would tax, what you pay all along, if Congress were to adopt and make law what Biden's what his bill, what the act, wants to do. So everybody's going to pay a little more tax, and QSBS may have some tax associated with it, but it will be very small compared to what all the other taxes are, and the surtax, so on and so forth.
And just kind of on that too, there's so much that's already been cut out of that, out of the bill, that it's very likely maybe nothing will change on QSBS, or that will get chopped completely and things remain as they are with the tax-free. So again, who knows, but we'll probably know pretty soon, but a lot of things I know have already been chopped out of that. So questions?
JR, I actually want to compliment the bill too. I know that seems kind of like a head scratcher, but my complimenting the bill, yes, it might cause some tax, but it's also causing us a lot of revenue. That revenue that comes into Tennessee and Kentucky for everything that's in the plan squarely falls in what we do. So it will make for a strong company.
There's 2 questions. Eric, I don't think JR can see it. Can you go to the bottom and at the Q&A it says 2? Can you open that?
Yeah.
And Richard, there's a question from Richard and an anonymous question, but do you mind? You want to go over that? Can you go over?
Yeah. Let me read Richard's question. Can you go over the return again? I had an astute investor understand the following. Looks like an illiquid preferred stock deal with a 6 to 7 year maturity and 8% IRR. given it's a Section 1202 deal with federal tax exemption on capital gains, that makes the investment equal to a 9.4% IRR on a taxable long-term capital gain basis. I can't speak for the astute investor or how the math was done, but the thing is that if it were, we look at it as the 9% when it comes to it under current law does not have the imposition of income tax. So if that were grossed up, if you will, if that's the net, if you had to pay a gross amount, if you got paid a gross amount that got taxed at what rates are, the return on this is actually more along the lines of 12 to 15%. The way you get to that math is that based on $100,000 investment, if you got 12 to 15%, depending on what tax bracket you're in. Now I assume everybody's in the top tax bracket or they wouldn't be doing this. So if you're at the top tax bracket now, it looks more like a 12% return. If the Biden tax increases were to hit, it could be a 15% return, and with the surtax, it could be higher. So remember that the 9% return that this speaks of is tax-free. So you have to gross it up depending on the client's tax bracket.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And you want to comment on any thoughts about expansion outside of Kentucky and Tennessee?
Yes. Currently we have more than we can say grace over in Tennessee and Kentucky. I don't know that Ed and I and the rest of our board and team have really thought through expanding to anywhere else. If we did, my personal opinion on it, Ed doesn't have to share this with me, but my personal opinion is in Georgia because I have other businesses, other opportunities that I could introduce the company in Georgia. We have bid on some business in Alabama on our stream mitigation portion of the business. Stream mitigation is hard to expand because the land the states that are around us already have banks. They already have banks that the credits are, going at say, $100 a credit. In Tennessee, those credits are going for sometimes $3,000 a credit. So we feel like we have an abundance of things to do for the term of this investment in Tennessee and Kentucky. But if the opportunity exists to expand somewhere else and it makes sense and it's consistent with what we've told investors here, then of course we'll consider it.
Okay.
I think the amount of work though is going to keep everyone pretty busy here in the areas that you're in for many, many years to come.
Thank you, everybody, for attending this. I don't think there are any more questions. I thank you all for being a part of it. JR, thanks for your comments and participation. Ed and Eric as well. And I think this will end our Highland Blasting Associates transactional discussion webinar. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.